Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we have a follow-up video to our Black Myth Wukong trailer breakdown. Now, it's been exactly a week since the trailer was initially released, and due to its overwhelming popularity, both within China and around the world, we have some more news straight from the horse's mouth as the developers themselves have released quite a few official statements since the launch of the trailer. Now, while I know my previous video ended up attracting quite a number of Chinese fans who showed up to voice their support both for this upcoming project and for my effort in providing the translation and backstories to an English-speaking audience, I do have to remind everyone that my intended audience is in fact an English-speaking audience, or else I would not be on YouTube in the first place. So some of these news that are going to get covered in this video will be old news for those who are lucky enough to be able to read and speak Chinese and have access to Weibo and other first-hand material, such as a recent interview with the developers. So speaking about these developers, I feel like I do owe them a proper introduction, as I had known nothing about them when the trailer first dropped, but with the help of some very helpful comment and some further research, I now have a pretty firm understanding of game science backstory and thus their motivation in making this game. Now, Game Science was founded in 2014 by a group of developers who had just left the publishing giant Tencent after a disagreement over the direction of a game called Azura, or 斗战神, which, as you can see here, is another Journey to the West IP. Unlike the Black Myth Wukong though, Azura was a MMO based on a web novel called Wukong Zhuan, which was this modern take on the classical literature Journey to the West, and some part of the story was combined with the popular 1995 film series, A Chinese Odyssey, which features the legendary Chinese comedian Stephen Chow. But as an MMO, the game required periodic updates and expansions, and for a gaming giant like Tencent, the focus is often going to be heavily on the profit side of things, and thus quality and artistic freedom ended up taking a back seat. Now, I'm not educated on the exact nature of their split, but everyone knows how this type of story work. We have all seen how many franchises and development teams companies like EA has ruined out in the West, so we can pretty much infer the story and move on. So this is also the reason why the closing line of the trailer said 白骨之后重走西游, as 白骨之后 means after the white skeleton, and since White Skeleton Demon was the last expansion that this team worked on for Azura before leaving, it makes sense how they are resuming their journey to the West after finishing up the White Skeleton Demon project for Azura. So with this backstory in mind, we can kind of understand how this team would be motivated to make their own Journey to the West IP. So for those of you who are worried that the trailer we saw was simply too good to be true, I can confidently say that this project is definitely a passion project for this company, and either we're going to end up getting a game that ends up looking better and plays better than this pre-alpha footage that we saw, or we will simply not get a game at all because the company would have failed trying. I do not believe they will make this trailer to create hype only to downgrade the final product to make a quick buck, as that was the reason why they had left Tencent to begin with. Now, speaking about a quick buck, this team has indeed been honing their skills in the mobile gaming arena since leaving Tencent as a way to survive and feed themselves. As far as I know, they have made 2 mobile games since founding their company. The first one is actually a fantasy take on 3 Kingdoms called 100 Heroes, or 百将行, which might actually interest some of my subscribers here on the channel since I mainly cover Total War 3 Kingdoms. The second game is, however, probably a bit more well known as it was featured on the Apple App Store recently and is called Art of War Red Tides, which is the Easter egg item in the game trailer, where Wukong collects the double-sided fire glaive, which shares the same name of 赤潮, or Red Tides. And for those non-mobile players, this game is actually also cross-platform on PC through Steam as a free-to-play game. So if you're interested in experiencing game science development talent, then maybe go give it a try. Now, I'm not here to sell you on game science. I do not know them, and personally, I already see some issues with them moving forward with Black Myth Wukong. First off, their team is incredibly small for this project. They currently have only 30 people working on the project, and the trailer that we saw amounts to about 2 years of work. Now granted, a lot of that work is on the plot and the direction for the game, but still, the whole purpose of the trailer for the team was to recruit, as even they acknowledge that their team is too small. And through the course of a recent interview, we also learned that this trailer only ended up showing about a third of that completed stage, with the wolf boss as one of 3 bosses in the Black Wind Mountain or Heifengshan storyline. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Journey to the West story entirely, I'll give a quick overview of what's happening here in Heifengshan in the book. So in the book, at this point, it's quite early on in the journey, and Wukong is accompanying his master, the Buddhist monk Xuanzang, on the way west. And as they are traveling through this region in the Black Wind Mountains, they find this temple to stay at. And this temple is the same Guanyin temple that was featured in the trailer. And at the time of the story, the temple was still a very lively place, with plenty of resident monks and a steady stream of followers paying their respect and going on pilgrimages to this temple. However, the abbot of the temple was quite envious of this gold-gilded robe that Xuanzang was wearing, since it was the gift from the emperor himself. So in the middle of the night, the abbot actually started a fire in his own temple, hoping to snatch this robe for himself in the confusion. However, this fire ended up engulfing his own temple, and it alerted the black bear demon living in the mountains nearby, and it was the black bear demon who ended up showing up and snatching the robe during all this chaos. Now this is also the same fire that's mentioned by the minor deity in our story to the protagonist in the trailer. So it's actually a big hint to the timeline of the game, which I will go into deeper detail a bit later. But back to the story at hand. So after the black bear demon stole this robe, Wukong was tasked with recovering it. But after a few failed attempts, Wukong ended up seeking the help of Guanyin, or the god of compassion, to help him out. And in their final recovery mission, Wukong ended up learning that 2 of the black bear's friends, namely an elder wolf demon and a snake demon, were both planning to attend the black bear's birthday celebration. So long story short, Wukong ended up killing the wolf demon before teaming up with Guanyin to trick the black bear demon into finally surrendering and becoming a tamed beast for Guanyin to help guard the southern mountain ranges for the gods, which is why this stage is designed to feature all 3 of these demons, with the elder wolf as the first stage, followed by a snake demon, before ending with the final showdown with the black bear demon. Now, going back to the plot line of the game in general, which is a major source of speculation since the trailer has dropped, I have learned that the game will officially take place after the journey to the west have happened, and that the plot is already largely finished, and it is largely based on the question of where did Wukong end up going after successfully completing this journey. And that's why in the trailer we can see the first mini wolf boss asking the protagonist to learn Buddhism with him, as he is a demon that had already been tamed once by Wukong and Guanyin when the journey had first taken place. And this also explains how the minor deity here is able to note how much the protagonist looks like the real Wukong, and how the temple already been burned down once and has now been rebuilt, but even though it's rebuilt, no one's coming back here because the abbot's darkened heart have been exposed for all to see. And the plot also seems to have a desire to explore what happened to all these defeated demons along the journey to the west, as it seems that the black bear demon has abandoned his duty in guarding the southern mountain ranges and has returned to his old hunting ground. So the Wukong who comes in and stops us from killing the wolf demon is most likely the real Wukong, who had already gone through this entire journey. Now why he is stopping us here is going to be a mystery, and probably the central mystery to the game right now, as we don't even know who we are officially playing as. The protagonist is only referred to as 天命人 during one of the scenes when the first mini-boss was dying, and this means the fated one, which can be a reference to our ability to change into a golden cicada perhaps, as the golden cicada is a reference to the fact that the monk, Xuanzang, was in fact the reincarnation of Buddha's own golden cicada. So perhaps we're playing as some sort of reincarnation of the Monkey King, set out to search for some sort of truth or freedom, or maybe just seeking out the real Wukong by retracing his steps. Or maybe we're just starting an entirely different journey altogether. And this sort of speculative material is something that I don't tend to do on the channel, since the channel is mainly focused on history, so I'll leave it to you guys in the comment section to share your best ideas, since the last video, plenty of good speculative theories were shared. Now regardless, I am sure we're all eager to learn more about the plot, but unfortunately, the developers who were equally overwhelmed by the reception they got from this trailer have decided to cease all communication so they can better focus on the production of the game itself. We can see from the few Weibo posts from the CEO of Game Science discussing this topic, and Weibo is the Chinese Twitter, so I translated most of his texts almost verbatim, but there are some that I just cut out because it's a little bit excessive, and there's some few sensitive things that I'll cover because this will bring me to the second key issue I see here with Game Science, and that's their public relations management. Here I have translated his last 3 Weibo posts about the trailer, and while I'm not here to crucify him about his choice of words, it's pretty clear that some of the boy club culture that we see in Western gaming development is also pretty prevalent with Game Science team as well. Well, I'm not here to judge his character as I'm not qualified, I don't know them, and I can't do so based on a few Weibo posts. I am worried that as a fan of the game and the product they're putting out, that these posts will only tarnish their reputation and limit their access to talents from across genders, beliefs, and views in general, as there have already been some backlash even in China regarding these posts. And at the end of the day, we have really no right to tell him what he can or cannot say, but for a company like Game Science, who is trying to evolve from this small indie developer into a sizable company capable of producing games of this quality and scale, the PR needs to step up as well. If you're going to end up posting something publicly as the CEO of the company, then perhaps you need to act like the CEO of the company that you aspire to become. Alright, not to end too negative here, there are some good news from all these posts and interviews, as we now know that Black Myth is aspiring to become a gaming universe IP, featuring popular Chinese myth like Wukong, with the goal of at least trying to make a trilogy, with Wukong being the first game in the series. Now, while this sounds all very grand given the development timetable for Wukong is looking like at least 2 to 3 years out, this news does give us a lot to look forward to say the least. And the game itself is inspired by some elements of Dark Souls series in terms of combat difficulty, and that the trailer itself was recorded with cheats enabled so that the player will never die, and there will be faster cooldown on abilities, and some extended transformation time were also used to enable the tester to present the game better. So for fans of the Dark Souls series, or those who enjoy good challenging extended boss fight, you'll be in for a treat when the game finally does launch. For now, all we can do is wait. But if the trailer has you excited for the journey to the West and you want to learn more, then I definitely would recommend picking up a translated copy of the book to read. Or if reading is not your thing, then the 1986 TV series, which might sound really old, but it is a classic. It is also available on YouTube with English subtitles, so all you need to do is search up the 1986 A Journey to the West and you'll find it and enjoy that on YouTube, all for free. And for those of you who are already familiar with the classical versions of the story and have seen perhaps the show during your childhood, perhaps checking out some of the more modern reinterpretations in the forms of web novels like Wukong Zhuan, which adds elements of love and also some philosophical debates about freedom into the old classical work, or just give Stephen Chow's masterpiece A Chinese Odyssey a watch. I have seen that movie at least 5 times, and the song at the end can still bring me to tears sometimes, which is pretty amazing for a comedy film. And for the younger audience or Western audience unfamiliar with Stephen Chow's work, his Chinese name is Zhou Xingchi, and his other works include Shaolin Soccer and Kung Fu, which were both big hits with global audiences. So hopefully that speaks to the quality of his work that will convince you to watch one of these older films, which in my opinion is much better than some of his later works, but that's because the audience is intended for a different group, as that was the old Hong Kong filmmaking golden age, and now it's more for a global audience. But this pretty much wraps up our update, and while I'm not expecting any more news anytime soon about Black Myth Wukong, but if there are, I'll be covering it. So until then, bye!